You are driving through a city at night. Somewhere past the last strip mall on the edge of town, there is a white van parked under a streetlight in a Walmart parking lot. The windows have reflective sunshades pressed against the glass from the inside. A faint glow leaks around the edges. Maybe a shadow moves behind the windshield. And the thought that crosses your mind is probably something close to this. Why is that person sleeping in a van when there is a free motel program 2 miles down the road? It seems like an obvious question, maybe even a compassionate one. But the assumption buried inside that question is wrong. And once you understand why, you will never look at a parked van the same way again. Welcome to Broke Brilliant, where we take the ordinary things you walk past every day and pull back the curtain on how they actually work. The first thing to understand is what the word free actually means when it is attached to a motel voucher. Across the United States, organizations like the Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul, and federal programs like the Emergency Food and Shelter Program offer motel vouchers to people experiencing homelessness. On paper, that sounds like a lifeline: a warm bed, a roof, a door that locks, hot water, maybe a continental breakfast. But the moment you look at what is actually attached to that room key, the picture changes completely. Most vouchers cover 1 to 3 nights. Some stretch to 7 days. A handful of programs, like the ones run through CalWorks in Riverside County, California, can extend up to 30 days, but only if you are already receiving cash aid through a government program and can formally demonstrate that no other shelter option exists. You have to prove homelessness, prove income eligibility, and prove that shelters in your area have turned you away. That is not a warm bed with no strings attached. That is a conditional, temporary, heavily documented intervention with a clock already ticking before you even walk through the door. But the time limit is only the first layer. To even get the voucher, you sit down with a case manager in a government office and go through a full intake. Questions about your income, your mental health history, your employment status, your substance use. You sign behavioral agreements. You commit to a housing plan, which typically means you have to demonstrate that you are actively pursuing permanent housing within a specific window. In some programs, if you cannot produce a viable housing plan within 2 weeks, you are out. The voucher is canceled, and you are back where you started, except now you have already used your eligibility with that particular agency and may not qualify again for 6 months or more. Then come the rules of the room itself. Curfews are standard, typically set between 7 and 10 o'clock at night. Now, think about what that means for someone who actually needs income. If you work a night shift at an Amazon fulfillment center, if you drive deliveries after dark, if you clean office buildings from midnight to 6 in the morning, your schedule and the program's schedule do not line up. You either lose the room or you lose the paycheck. There is no negotiation built into that system. The room comes with a timetable, and the timetable does not bend, and the restrictions do not stop at the schedule. Pets are almost universally prohibited. Your dog, the one thing that has kept you grounded through 6 months of sleeping in parking lots, cannot come inside. Partners or family members who are not individually listed on the voucher cannot stay overnight. Visitors are not allowed. Alcohol is banned regardless of whether you have a dependency issue or not. Some programs require daily sobriety screenings at the front desk before you can access your own room. And if you violate any single one of these conditions, the voucher is revoked immediately. You are back to square one with a note in your case file. So when someone sitting in a van looks at that motel 2 miles down the road, they are not seeing a warm bed with no strings attached. They are seeing a 72-hour countdown with a curfew, a case file being opened in their name, a behavioral contract, and a long list of rules they did not write. The van, by comparison, has no expiration date. Nobody revokes it. Nobody reviews your conduct. But even if someone is willing to accept every one of those conditions, there is another layer underneath that almost never makes it into the conversation. And this is where the data gets difficult to hear. A peer-reviewed study published in the National Library of Medicine found that 22% of homeless young adults reported experiencing sexual assault in shelter settings. Among women, the rate was nearly double that of men. Now sit with that for a second. Not theft, not discomfort, sexual assault, in the place that is supposed to be the safe alternative to the street. In a separate 2022 Los Angeles survey of homeless women without children, more than half reported theft. Over 40% were repeatedly harassed or threatened, and more than a third were physically attacked during their time accessing services. These are not rare incidents at one poorly run facility. These are patterns documented across multiple cities and multiple years of peer-reviewed research. Think about what that actually looks like at 2 a.m. A congregate shelter places 50 to 100 strangers in close physical proximity while they sleep. A single staff member monitoring a floor of 80 to 100 residents after midnight cannot realistically prevent or respond to anything in real time. Residents learn the rules of that environment quickly. They sleep with their shoes on. They keep their bag pressed under their head. They do not leave anything unattended because it will not be there when they come back. In Washington, D.C., an estimated 58% of homeless individuals reported being unable to get sufficient sleep in shelter environments, not because of the mattress, because of constant noise, fear of theft, zero privacy, and the unpredictability of being surrounded by strangers in a room with no partition walls. In Seattle, survey data revealed that only about 25% of people referred to shelters actually decided to stay. 3 out of 4 people looked at the option and walked away. When researchers in the UK studied why rough sleepers refused to come indoors during the pandemic emergency hotel programs, the answers were consistent across every interview. It was not inability or chaos. It was safety, autonomy, and the preservation of whatever stability they had managed to build on their own. The congregate setting itself was the deterrent, not the concept of shelter. And when those same individuals were later offered private, permanent housing with optional support services, many were able and willing to sustain a regular tenancy for years. The problem was never their willingness to live indoors. The problem was what indoors actually meant in practice. So these are not people making irrational choices. These are people running a risk assessment every single night and arriving at the same conclusion. The known risk of their van is lower than the unknown risk of a room full of strangers. Now compare that setup against what a van actually provides. And this is where the gap stops being close. A motel voucher gives you a mattress for 72 hours, a curfew, and a case manager reviewing your progress. A converted van, even a basic one bought, used for $2,000 or $3,000, gives you roughly 60 to 80 square feet of private, lockable space with no expiration date. That is small, absolutely, but it is also comparable in floor area to a micro-studio apartment in Manhattan or a single dorm room at a state university. The difference that matters is that the door locks from the inside, and nobody else on the planet has a key to it. Number 17, meatloaf with tomato glaze and green beans. Where the motel voucher requires daily check-ins and sobriety screenings, the van requires nothing. Where the shelter prohibits your dog, the van has no rules about who rides with you. Where the program enforces a curfew that conflicts with your night shift, the van lets you come and go on your own schedule. Where the motel parking lot was not designed for your vehicle, the van is the parking lot. A basic van dwelling setup includes a sleeping platform, usually built from plywood sheets and topped with a foam mattress. Below the platform is storage. Locked compartments for birth certificates, social security cards, prescriptions, medications, and clothing. Everything that gets stolen in a shelter stays secured here. Power comes from a secondary deep cycle battery wired to the vehicle alternator, enough to run a small refrigerator, a phone charger, a ventilation fan in summer, and LED lighting after dark. Longer-term setups add a small solar panel mounted flat on the roof so everything stays charged without idling the engine. Some go further, adding a portable propane heater for cold weather, blackout curtains on every window for privacy and temperature regulation, and a water jug with a hand pump for washing dishes and hands. It is not luxury, but it is organized, private, and entirely under the control of the person living in it. And for someone comparing it against a shared facility where 1 in 5 young adults reports being assaulted, the van is not the worst option. It is the safer one. But here is the detail that reframes everything once you hear it. The van is not just a place to sleep. It is the single most valuable asset that person owns. It stores their documents securely. It gets them to job interviews at staffing agencies across town. It gets them to doctor appointments, VA offices, and social service buildings that may be 30 miles apart in a metro area with limited public transit. It provides the one resource that separates someone experiencing temporary homelessness from someone sliding into the chronic, long-term kind. Mobility. Without the van, a job interview 15 miles away requires a bus transfer, a 2-hour window, and arriving on foot with everything you own in a backpack. With the van, you drive there in 20 minutes, change into clean clothes you stored in a compartment under the bed, and walk in looking like any other applicant. That difference is not abstract. It is the difference between getting the callback and not getting the callback. A UCLA study from 2022 found that people living in their vehicles were more likely to be employed and less likely to be chronically homeless than people sleeping on sidewalks or in tent encampments. The vehicle is the bridge between where they were and where they are trying to get back to. And a comprehensive 2024 study by the University of California, San Diego examined one of the largest safe parking programs in the country, run by Jewish Family Service in San Diego, and found that 73% of participants were experiencing homelessness for the first time. They were not people with decades of chronic street life behind them. They were people who lost a lease, missed a critical paycheck, went through a divorce, or had a single medical emergency drain their savings account in a matter of weeks. Contrary to common assumptions, the study found that safe parking clients had significantly lower rates of mental health and substance use issues than the broader homeless population. These are not people who cannot function inside a housing system. These are people navigating a gap between what they had yesterday and what they can access tomorrow. Giving up the van to enter a shelter for 3 nights means risking the one asset that gives them the best statistical chance of climbing back out. And some shelter programs even classify the vehicle itself as an asset, which can disqualify someone from income-based assistance programs. So the very thing keeping them off the sidewalk becomes the thing that blocks them from getting help. This is where the conversation about preference starts to make complete sense. It is not a preference for discomfort over comfort. It is a preference for control over dependence. In a van, there is no curfew. You can work any shift at any hour, leave when you need to, and return when it suits your schedule. If a neighborhood feels unsafe at 2 in the morning, you turn the key and drive to a different street. If you have a dog, the dog stays with you. If you have a partner, no one tells you they cannot be in the vehicle. If you need to take medication that makes you drowsy in the morning, no one is banging on your door at 6 a.m. for a mandatory checkout and intake screening. Every single one of those freedoms disappears the moment you hand over that voucher paperwork and accept a bed in a program you did not design. For veterans specifically, this picture gets even sharper. Thousands of veterans cycle into homelessness every year, and many of them fit the exact profile we have been describing throughout this video. First-time homeless, employed or receiving VA benefits, functional, resourceful, and looking for a bridge back to stable housing. The van is not evidence of their failure. The van is their operational plan for recovery. I compiled the most critical VA pathways, safe parking networks, and benefit workarounds into a resource called the Veterans Blueprint. It is linked in the description below. If you are a veteran or you know someone who served, it is worth a look. And all of this connects directly to something you see almost every single day without recognizing what it actually represents. That white van in the Walmart parking lot is not random. Walmart has historically allowed overnight vehicle parking at many of its locations as a corporate policy. For someone living in a van, that single policy is the difference between sleeping without fear of a citation and waking up to a tow truck and a parking ticket at 3 in the morning. The church parking lot with 3 vehicles clustered in the back corner at midnight, those are not volunteers setting up for a morning event. The rest area off the interstate where a van has been sitting in the same spot for 2 consecutive nights, that person is not on a road trip. These are people operating inside a system that was never designed to acknowledge them. And once you start looking, you will see the evidence of that system everywhere. The Cracker Barrel off the highway exit with a van parked in the far corner at 11 at night, the hospital parking garage with a vehicle on the top floor that has been in the same spot for 3 days straight. The Planet Fitness in the strip mall where someone parks every single night and walks inside at 5 in the morning because a $10 monthly gym membership is the cheapest shower in America. These are not coincidences. These are the infrastructure of a parallel housing system that millions of people navigate every single day while the rest of us drive past without a second thought. And the official response has increasingly moved in one direction. Since 2006, local ordinances restricting people from living in vehicles have increased by more than 213% across the United States. Cities have passed laws banning overnight parking on residential streets, prohibiting sleeping in vehicles within city limits, and authorizing police to tow vans from public property without warning. In 2024, the Supreme Court ruled in Grants Pass versus Johnson that municipalities can enforce anti-camping and anti-sleeping laws, even when no shelter space is available for the people being displaced. The numbers behind that are worth understanding. In Los Angeles alone, people living in vehicles account for more than 44% of the entire unsheltered homeless population. The safe parking programs designed to serve them can handle a fraction of that need. Safe Parking LA, one of the largest and most well-funded programs in the country, serves roughly 300 people per year. The math does not come close, and the real scale is almost certainly larger than any official count reflects. The National Point in Time survey happens once a year on a single January night, using volunteers who walk routes where homeless individuals are expected to be. A van parked on a quiet residential street with the shades drawn at 2 in the morning is almost certainly not showing up in that count. The actual number of people living in vehicles across the United States is likely far higher than any published figure. But the vans keep showing up in the same parking lots, in the same corners every single night, because the math has not changed. The next time you are driving at night and you pass a dark van tucked against the far edge of a parking lot, remember what you now know. That is not someone who could not afford a room. That is someone who weighed a 72-hour voucher with a curfew, a case file, a behavioral contract, and a facility where 1 in 5 young adults reports being assaulted, against a van with a lock that works, 4 wheels that move, privacy that nobody can revoke, and the ability to keep their life together while they find their way back. They looked at both options with clear eyes, weighed the trade-offs, and chose the one that keeps them safest, most independent, and most likely to reach permanent housing. The van does not stop, it just rests, and then it goes again. That is the system behind the simple thing you never thought twice about. If you want to understand the hidden logic behind the world around you, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Broke Brilliant.